The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the dusty general store, and Genevieve Turner stepped down onto the wooden boardwalk with trembling legs, her heart pounding so hard she was certain everyone in Jamestown, California, could hear it. The year was 1878, and she had traveled nearly 2,000 miles from Boston with nothing but a small trunk, a faded photograph of the man who had promised to marry her, and hope burning bright in her chest, despite everything that had brought her to this moment. Her fingers gripped the worn handle of her carpetbag as she looked around the small mining town, nestled in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, taking in the ramshackle buildings, the mud-caked streets, and the curious stares of the townspeople who had stopped their daily business to watch the new arrival. She smoothed down her traveling dress, knowing she must look a sight after weeks on trains and stage coaches, her dark blonde hair escaping its pins and dust, coating every inch of fabric. But she held her head high because she had come too far to falter now. Her intended husband, a man named Marcus Campbell, had written to her through a matrimonial agency after her father's death had left her penniless and facing a future as a seamstress in a crowded boarding house. His letters had been kind, practical, describing his ranch and his need for a wife to help build a life in the growing West. She had responded honestly about her circumstances, and when he had sent the money for passage, she had taken the leap of faith that so many women before her had taken. A tall figure emerged from the saloon across the street, and Genevieve's breath caught. The man was broad-shouldered and lean, with dark hair visible beneath his worn Stetson and a face weathered by sun and hard work. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who belonged to this wild land, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust as he crossed the street toward her. His eyes, she noticed as he drew closer, were a striking blue-gray, the color of storm clouds over the ocean she had left behind. "Miss Turner." His voice was deep and rough, as though he did not use it often for pleasantries. "Yes, are you Mr. Campbell?" She searched his face, trying to match it to the photograph she carried, but the image had been old and faded, impossible to truly compare. He removed his hat, revealing more of his tanned face, the lines around his eyes speaking of long days in the sun. "I am Marcus Campbell. Welcome to Jamestown." He paused, his gaze sweeping over her in a way that made her feel both examined and somehow seen in a manner no one had looked at her before. The journey must have been difficult. "It was long," she admitted, surprised by the genuine concern in his tone. "But I am here now, and I am grateful for the opportunity you have given me." Something flickered in his eyes at her words, an emotion she could not quite name. "Your letter said you had no family left." "My father passed 6 months ago. There was nothing left in Boston for me." She met his gaze directly, willing him to see that she was not running away but running toward something, toward the possibility of a new life. "I know this arrangement is unconventional, but I will work hard. I can cook and clean and manage a household. I will be a good wife." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile but close. "I do not doubt it, Miss Turner, but first you must be exhausted. Let me show you to the ranch. We can talk more there and you can rest and decide if this is truly what you want." "Decide?" The word startled her. "But I have already decided. I came all this way. And now that you are here, you should see what you are agreeing to before we make any vows." He picked up her trunk as though it weighed nothing, gesturing toward a wagon hitched nearby. "I will not trap you into something you might regret." As he helped her onto the wagon seat, his hand steady beneath her elbow, Genevieve felt the first stirring of something beyond relief or hope. This man, this stranger who was to become her husband, had just offered her a choice when she had expected only obligation. The touch of his calloused palm through her sleeve sent an unexpected warmth through her, and when she settled onto the worn wooden seat, she found herself studying his profile as he climbed up beside her. The ride out to the ranch took nearly an hour, the wagon following a winding dirt road that climbed into rolling hills dotted with oak trees and golden grass. Marcus pointed out landmarks as they went, his voice growing more animated when he spoke of the land. She learned that he had been in California for 8 years, that he had started with nothing and built his ranch from the ground up, that he ran cattle and bred horses, and was slowly making a name for himself as a fair and honest businessman in a territory where such qualities were not always valued. "Why did you write to the matrimonial agency?" Genevieve asked after a comfortable silence had fallen between them. "Surely there are women here who would be interested in marrying a successful rancher." He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his words were measured. "I wanted someone who understood what it meant to build something from nothing. Most of the women here, they are either looking for gold miners who struck it rich or they are already spoken for, and I wanted." He trailed off, his jaw tightening. "What did you want?" she pressed gently. "Someone who chose this life deliberately, not someone who ended up here by accident or circumstance, but someone who looked at the opportunity and decided it was worth the risk." He glanced at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her pulse quicken. "Your letters, they were honest. You did not pretend to be something you were not. That mattered to me." "Your letters were kind," she said softly. "In a time when I felt very alone, they gave me something to hope for." The ranch came into view as they crested a hill, and Genevieve drew in a sharp breath. The main house was larger than she had expected, a sturdy wooden structure with a wide porch and real glass windows that caught the afternoon sun. There were several outbuildings, corrals with horses, and in the distance, she could see cattle grazing on the hillsides. It was beautiful in a raw, untamed way that made her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "You built all of this?" she asked, unable to hide her amazement. "With help?" "I have 3 men who work for me full-time, good men. They have their own quarters in the bunkhouse." He brought the wagon to a stop in front of the house. "I know it is not Boston." "No," she agreed, still taking it all in. "It is better. It is yours." The way he looked at her then, with surprise and something deeper, something that might have been the beginning of respect or perhaps wonder, made her feel as though she had passed some test she had not known she was taking. He helped her down from the wagon, and this time his hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary, steadying her as her feet found the ground. "Let me show you inside," he said, his voice rougher than before. The interior of the house was simpler than the exterior suggested, but it was clean and well-maintained. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. There was a table with mismatched chairs, a rocking chair near the hearth, and shelves lined with books that surprised her. Through an open door, she could see what appeared to be a bedroom. "I will sleep in the bunkhouse with the men until we are married," Marcus said, following her gaze. "The bedroom is yours. I want you to feel safe here, to know that I am a man of my word." Genevieve turned to face him fully, studying this man who continued to surprise her. He stood with his hat in his hands, watching her with an expression that was both guarded and hopeful. And she realized with a sudden clarity that he was as uncertain about this arrangement as she was, that he had taken as much of a risk in bringing her here as she had taken in coming. "When would you like to marry?" she asked, making her decision. "I see no reason to wait if you are still willing." "Still willing." He stepped closer, and she could smell the scent of leather and sage that clung to him. "Miss Turner, Genevieve, if I may call you that, I have been waiting for you since the moment I received your first letter. If you are certain, we can go into town tomorrow and speak with the preacher." "I am certain," she said and meant it. I am very certain." The relief that washed over his face transformed it, making him look younger, less burdened. "Then we will marry tomorrow. But tonight you should rest. I will have my men bring in your trunk and I will see about making us some supper." "I can cook," she offered quickly. "I told you I would work and I meant it." "I know you did. But tonight you are a guest. Tomorrow you will be my wife and we will figure out the rest together." He settled his hat back on his head and moved toward the door. "There is a pump out back for water and I laid a fire this morning that just needs to be lit. Make yourself at home, Genevieve. This is your house now." After he left, Genevieve sank into the rocking chair, her legs suddenly weak. She had done it. She had crossed a continent, left everything familiar behind and placed her trust in a stranger. And yet, as she looked around the simple room that was to become her home, she did not feel the fear she had expected. Instead, she felt that same bright hope that had carried her through the long journey. Only now it was mixed with something else. Something that had sparked to life when Marcus Campbell looked at her with those storm cloud eyes and treated her not as a commodity or a solution to a problem, but as a person worthy of respect and choice. True to his word, Marcus returned an hour later with a younger man who carried her trunk as though it weighed nothing. The ranch hand tipped his hat to her with a shy smile and left quickly, but not before she saw the curiosity in his eyes. She wondered what the men thought of their boss bringing home a mail-order bride, but she pushed the thought aside. She would prove herself through her actions, not her worries. Marcus proved surprisingly competent in the kitchen, preparing a simple meal of beans, salt pork, and cornbread that they ate at the table as the sun set beyond the windows. The conversation flowed more easily than she had anticipated, covering safe topics like the weather, the growing season, and the nearby towns. But beneath the ordinary words, Genevieve was aware of an undercurrent of tension, the knowledge that tomorrow they would pledge their lives to each other when they were still strangers in so many ways. "Tell me about your father," Marcus said as she helped him clear the dishes. "Your letters mentioned him, but not in detail." Genevieve felt the familiar ache of grief, still fresh despite the months that had passed. "He was a bookkeeper, a kind man but not a practical one. When he died, I discovered he had debts I knew nothing about. Everything had to be sold to settle them." She paused, swallowing hard. "I kept only a few of his books. They are in my trunk." "The books on the shelves are mine," Marcus said. "I taught myself to read properly only after I came here. Before that, I could manage enough to get by, but no more. I figure a man should better himself when he can." He hesitated, then added, "If you like to read, you are welcome to them, and if you have books I have not seen, I would be grateful to borrow them." The simple offer touched her more than grand gestures might have. "I would like that. Perhaps we could read together sometimes in the evenings." "I would like that too," he said, and the small smile he gave her made her stomach flutter in a way that was entirely new and not unwelcome. That night, lying in the bed that smelled of fresh linen and sunshine, Genevieve stared at the ceiling and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch settling around her. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called, and closer by, she could hear the soft movements of horses in the corral. Tomorrow she would become Genevieve Campbell, wife to a man she had known for less than a day. The thought should have terrified her, but instead, she felt a calm certainty settling in her bones. She had made the right choice in coming here. Whatever the future held, it would be hers to build, not something forced upon her by circumstances beyond her control. Sleep came easier than she expected, and she woke to the sound of roosters crowing and the smell of coffee drifting through the house. She dressed quickly in her best dress, a simple blue cotton that brought out the green in her hazel eyes, and braided her hair into a neat coronet. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Marcus standing by the stove, 2 cups of coffee already poured. "Good morning," he said, his gaze sweeping over her in a way that made her blush. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," she managed, accepting the coffee cup he offered. Their fingers brushed, and she felt that same spark of warmth from yesterday. "Are you ready?" he asked. "We do not have to do this today if you need more time." "I am ready," she assured him. "Are you?" He set down his cup and crossed the space between them, stopping just close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Genevieve, I want you to know that I will do everything in my power to make you happy. I know this is not a conventional marriage, but I intend to honor the vows we make today. I will protect you, provide for you, and respect you. And I hope in time that we might build something real between us." Her throat tightened with emotion at the sincerity in his voice. "I want that too," she whispered. "I want to build a real life here with you." He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was gentle, almost reverent, and it made her breath catch. "Then let us go make you my wife." The ceremony at the small church in Jamestown was simple and quick, witnessed by the preacher, his wife, and 2 townspeople pulled in from the street. Genevieve spoke her vows in a clear, steady voice, meaning every word, and when Marcus slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, she felt the weight of it like a promise. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and told Marcus he could kiss his bride, there was a moment of hesitation where they simply looked at each other, acknowledging the enormity of what they had just done. Then Marcus cupped her face in his calloused hands and kissed her with a tenderness that made her eyes sting with tears. It was her first kiss, and though it was brief and chaste given their audience, it felt like the sealing of something important, the beginning of a story that was theirs alone to write. They rode back to the ranch as husband and wife, and the reality of it settled over Genevieve with a mix of excitement and nervousness. She was married. She belonged here now, to this land and this man, and he belonged to her in equal measure. "I know this might be awkward," Marcus said as they approached the house. "Us being strangers still in many ways, I want you to know that I will not rush you into anything you are not ready for. We can take our time, getting to know each other." Genevieve appreciated his consideration, but she also felt a boldness rising in her, born from the hope she had carried across the country and the growing attraction she felt toward this good man. "We are husband and wife now," she said. "I do not want to live as strangers under the same roof. I want to truly be your wife, Marcus, in all ways." The heat that flared in his eyes at her words sent a shiver down her spine. "Are you certain?" "I am certain," she said, echoing her words from the day before. "I want to start our life together properly." He helped her down from the wagon, and this time when his hands encircled her waist, he did not let go immediately. Instead, he drew her closer until they stood pressed together in the afternoon sunlight and kissed her again. This kiss was different from the one in the church, deeper and more urgent, speaking of desire held carefully in check. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I will try to be gentle," he murmured. "But you must tell me if I do anything that frightens you." "You do not frighten me," she assured him, and it was true. Despite her inexperience, despite the vulnerability of what was to come, she trusted him in a way that surprised her. He swept her into his arms, making her gasp and laugh, and carried her across the threshold of their home. The bedroom door closed behind them, shutting out the world, and Genevieve gave herself over to her husband's careful, passionate attention, discovering that the connection between them was even stronger than she had dared to hope. Later, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, they lay tangled together in the bed, and Genevieve felt a contentment she had never known. Marcus held her close, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder, and she could hear the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. "Thank you," he said softly, "for taking a chance on me on this life. I know you gave up everything familiar to come here." She lifted her head to look at him, seeing the vulnerability in his expression. "I did not give up anything," she said firmly. "I had nothing left in Boston but memories and obligations. Here I have a future. I have you. I have a chance to build something meaningful." She paused, then added, "Thank you for seeing the hope in my eyes and choosing to nurture it rather than take advantage of it. You could have been anyone, a cruel man or a careless one, but instead, you are kind and honorable. I am grateful for that." He pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "I saw that hope, and I recognized it because I felt the same when I first came to California. This land, it gives people a second chance if they are brave enough to take it. I wanted to give you that chance, but I also selfishly wanted someone who understood what I was trying to build here, someone who could share in it." "I want to share in it," she promised. "I want to learn everything about the ranch, about the land, about this life. Teach me, Marcus. Let me be a true partner to you." "I will," he vowed. "Starting tomorrow." The days that followed were a whirlwind of learning and adjustment. Marcus proved to be a patient teacher, showing Genevieve the workings of the ranch with the same care he had shown her on their wedding night. She learned to recognize the different cattle by their markings, to understand the rhythms of the horses, and to navigate the land that was now her home. The work was harder than anything she had done in Boston, leaving her muscles aching and her hands blistered. But it was also deeply satisfying in a way that genteel needlework had never been. The ranch hands, initially wary of the new mistress, gradually warmed to her as she proved herself willing to work alongside them when needed. There was Tom, a grizzled older man who had worked cattle drives in Texas before settling in California. Young Billy, barely 20, who had come west seeking adventure, and Roberto, a skilled horseman whose family had lived in California for generations, long before it became a state. They treated her with respect, tipping their hats and calling her Mrs. Campbell, and she made sure to learn their preferences in cooking and their stories during the evening meals she prepared. Marcus was a revelation. The more time Genevieve spent with him, the more she discovered depths to his character that his letters had only hinted at. He was thoughtful and intelligent, often surprising her with insights into everything from breeding stock to literature. In the evenings, they fell into a comfortable routine of reading together by the fireplace, discussing the books and sharing their thoughts. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh, and a gentleness with the animals that spoke of a kind soul beneath his weathered exterior. Their physical relationship deepened as well, the initial awkwardness giving way to a passionate connection that left Genevieve marveling at the intimacy possible between two people. Marcus was an attentive lover, always ensuring her pleasure before his own, and she found herself growing bolder in expressing her desires, trusting him completely with her vulnerability. 3 months into their marriage, as autumn began to paint the hills in shades of gold and russet, Genevieve stood on the porch one morning watching Marcus work with a spirited young stallion in the corral. She had been feeling off for several days, a strange queasiness that seemed worst in the mornings, and a sudden realization struck her with the force of a lightning bolt. Her hand went to her still flat stomach, and her eyes widened. That evening, as they sat down to supper, she could not keep the news to herself any longer. "Marcus, I think I might be with child." He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth, his eyes going wide. "You think? Are you certain?" "Not entirely, but the signs are there. I have missed my monthly courses, and I have been feeling ill in the mornings." She watched his face anxiously, unsure how he would react to the news coming so soon. He set down his fork carefully, pushed back from the table, and crossed to where she sat. Kneeling beside her chair, he took both her hands in his expression a mix of awe and joy. "A baby, our baby." His voice cracked with emotion. "Genevieve, are you happy about this?" "Yes," she said, tears springing to her eyes. "I am very happy, are you?" "Happy does not begin to cover it," he said roughly, pulling her into his arms. "You have given me everything. A home worth coming back to, a reason to build for the future, and now a child. I love you, Genevieve. I know we have not known each other long, but I love you with everything I am." The words she had been holding back, afraid it was too soon to speak them, burst free. "I love you too. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you offered me a choice instead of an obligation, and every day since, I have fallen deeper." They held each other, both crying happy tears, until Marcus pulled back enough to kiss her thoroughly. "We should get the doctor out here to examine you, make sure everything is well." "I will," she promised. "But Marcus, I feel wonderful. Tired and queasy, yes, but also happier than I ever imagined possible." The doctor confirmed her pregnancy 2 weeks later, proclaiming her healthy and estimating the baby would arrive in late spring. The news spread through the small community quickly, and Genevieve found herself on the receiving end of advice from every woman in Jamestown, from the preacher's wife to the saloon owner's mother. She accepted it all with good humor, grateful for the sense of community that had embraced her. As winter settled over the ranch, bringing cold rains and occasional snow to the higher elevations, Genevieve and Marcus grew even closer. The intimacy of the quiet winter months, when the work of the ranch slowed and they spent long evenings together, deepened their bond. They talked about everything, sharing their pasts, their dreams, and their hopes for the child growing within her. Marcus proved to be almost comically protective, worrying over her constantly and trying to prevent her from doing any heavy work. She tolerated it with amusement and gentle firmness, insisting that she was pregnant, not ill, and that she needed to stay active. They compromised, with her taking on lighter tasks and Marcus hiring an additional hand to help with the heavier ranch work. "I have been thinking," Marcus said one evening as they sat together, his hand resting on her gently swelling stomach, "about expanding the ranch. We have been doing well, and with the baby coming, I want to ensure we have a solid foundation for the future." "What kind of expansion?" Genevieve asked, intrigued. She had come to love the business side of the ranch as much as the daily work, and Marcus valued her input on decisions. "There is a parcel of land adjacent to ours, good grazing land with a year-round creek. The owner is looking to sell and move back east. If we can purchase it, we could increase our herd substantially, maybe even start breeding horses more seriously. Roberto has the knowledge, and I think there is good money to be made in quality horses." They discussed the possibilities late into the night, Genevieve's mind spinning with ideas and Marcus listening to her suggestions with the respect that had become the foundation of their partnership. By the time they went to bed, they had formulated a plan that excited them both. The land purchase went through in early February, and with it came a renewed energy on the ranch. Marcus hired 2 more men, both experienced ranch hands recommended by Tom, and the work of improving the new property began. Genevieve, now visibly pregnant and glowing with health, managed the household with increasing confidence and took over much of the record-keeping for the ranch, her neat handwriting filling the ledgers with careful notations of expenses and income. Spring arrived with an explosion of wildflowers across the hills, and Genevieve's pregnancy advanced into its final weeks. She grew large and ungainly, her ankles swelling and her back aching, but she remained in good spirits, excited for the coming baby. Marcus fretted constantly, sending someone into town for the doctor at the first sign of labor pains. On a warm May morning in 1879, after 12 hours of labor that left her exhausted but triumphant, Genevieve gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Marcus, who had paced the porch for the entire ordeal despite the doctor's assurance that everything was progressing normally, was ushered into the bedroom to meet his son with tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Marcus breathed, cradling the tiny bundle with awkward care. "Look at him, Genevieve. He is absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" she asked, watching her husband fall in love with their child in real time. "I was thinking," Marcus said hesitantly, "maybe we could name him after your father. You never told me his name, but I know you loved him." Fresh tears sprang to Genevieve's eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "His name was Joseph Turner." "Then how about Joseph Marcus Campbell, Joseph for your father, and he can go by Joe if he likes." "It is perfect," she whispered, "just like he is." The first months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Little Joe proved to be a healthy, hungry baby who kept them both awake at odd hours but rewarded them with his first smiles and the way he gripped their fingers with surprising strength. Marcus was a devoted father, taking time from his work to help with the baby and giving Genevieve opportunities to rest. The ranch hands were equally smitten, with even gruff old Tom becoming putty in the baby's hands. As Joe grew into a chubby, happy infant, Genevieve reflected often on how much her life had changed in just over a year. She had arrived in Jamestown with nothing but hope, and had found a love deeper than she had dreamed possible, a home that filled her heart, and a family that gave her life meaning. She watched Marcus playing with their son on the porch one evening as the sun set, his laughter ringing out as Joe grabbed at his father's hair, and felt such overwhelming gratitude that it brought tears to her eyes. Marcus caught her watching and smiled, the expression transforming his sun-weathered face. "What are you thinking about?" "About how happy I am," she said simply. "About how I took the biggest risk of my life coming here, and it turned out to be the best decision I ever made." He came to sit beside her, Joe balanced on his knee. "I took a risk too, you know, writing to that agency, sending money to a woman I had never met, hoping she would be someone I could build a life with. When you stepped off that stagecoach and I saw the hope in your eyes despite everything you had been through, I knew I wanted to protect that hope, to nurture it. I wanted to give you everything I had to offer and pray it would be enough." "It was more than enough," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "It was everything." Joe reached for his mother and she took him, breathing in his sweet baby smell. This was her family, her home, her life. She had crossed a continent to find it, guided by hope and courage, and she had found a man who had seen that hope and given her his whole heart in return. The years flowed past like water in the creek that ran through their expanded property, each season bringing new challenges and joys. Joe grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's dark hair and his mother's hazel eyes, tearing around the ranch with fearless enthusiasm that gave Genevieve heart palpitations and made Marcus laugh with pride. The ranch continued to prosper, their reputation for quality cattle and well-trained horses spreading throughout the region. In the spring of 1881, Genevieve gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Grace. She came into the world with a lusty cry and a head full of blonde hair, and Marcus fell in love all over again. Joe, now 2 years old, was initially suspicious of the tiny creature who took up so much of his mother's attention, but gradually warmed to his baby sister, especially when he discovered she would smile at him. The house, which had once seemed spacious, now felt full in the best possible way. Toys littered the floors. Children's laughter echoed through the rooms, and Genevieve managed the chaos with a competence that amazed her when she thought back to the frightened young woman who had arrived with only hope to sustain her. Marcus proved to be as devoted a father to their daughter as he was to their son, despite the common wisdom that men preferred boys. He could often be found rocking Grace to sleep in the evenings, singing old cowboy songs in his rough voice, or playing elaborate games with Joe that involved much running and shouting. Watching him with their children never failed to make Genevieve's heart swell with love. "You ever regret it?" she asked him one night after the children were finally asleep and they had collapsed into bed, exhausted but content. "Regret what?" he asked, pulling her close. "Marrying a mail-order bride. You could have waited, maybe found someone you courted properly." He was quiet for a moment, and she could practically hear him thinking. "Genevieve, if I had waited, I would not have you. I would not have Joe or Grace. I would not have this life we have built together. You came here with hope in your eyes, and I saw it and wanted to be worthy of it. Every single day since, I have tried to be the man you believed I was when you stepped off that stagecoach. So no, I do not regret it for even a moment, do you?" "Never," she said fiercely. "Not once. You gave me everything, Marcus. A home, a purpose, a family, and a love I did not even know was possible. You saw me when I was lost and gave me a place to belong." "We gave each other that," he corrected gently. "This life we have, we built it together." As the 1880s progressed, the ranch became one of the most successful in the region. Marcus's careful breeding program produced horses that were sought after throughout California, and their cattle operation continued to provide steady income. They added onto the house, creating more bedrooms and a proper parlor, and Genevieve filled it with furniture ordered from San Francisco and books purchased whenever they made the trip to Sacramento. Joe and Grace grew like weeds, their childhood filled with the freedom and adventure of ranch life. Joe learned to ride almost before he could walk properly, fearless on horseback in a way that terrified his mother and filled his father with pride. Grace was quieter but no less determined, following her brother everywhere and insisting on learning everything he learned. In 1884, Genevieve found herself pregnant again, a surprise that delighted Marcus and made her feel both excited and slightly overwhelmed. She was 31 now, no longer the young bride who had arrived in Jamestown, and she wondered if she had the energy for another infant. But when their third child arrived that winter, another boy they named Thomas after the ranch hand who had become like family, she found reserves of love and patience she had not known she possessed. The children adored their baby brother, with Joe taking his role as oldest very seriously, and Grace mothering little Thomas with the intensity only a 4-year-old could manage. The house rang with noise and activity, and though Genevieve sometimes longed for quiet, she would not have traded the chaos for anything. Marcus hired more help, both for the ranch and for Genevieve in the house. A young woman named Sarah came 3 times a week to help with laundry and cleaning, and Genevieve was grateful for the assistance. She had long since stopped being too proud to accept help, recognizing that trying to do everything herself served no one. The years continued their steady march forward. Jamestown grew from a rough mining town into a proper community, with a real school, a newspaper, and even a small library that Genevieve helped establish, donating books and organizing fundraisers. She became a respected figure in the town, known for her kindness and her practical help to newcomers, especially other mail-order brides who arrived looking as lost as she once had. "You help them because you remember," Marcus observed one evening after she had spent the afternoon settling a newly arrived bride with supplies and advice. I remember exactly how frightening it was, Genevieve agreed. How alone I felt, even though you were kind. If I can ease that for someone else, I want to. He kissed her forehead. You have such a good heart. It is one of the 1,000 reasons I love you. Joe grew into a tall, serious boy who loved the ranch with the same passion his father did. By the time he was 12, he was doing the work of a grown hand, and Marcus began teaching him the business side of ranching, knowing his son would one day inherit everything they had built. Grace was 10, and showing signs of inheriting her mother's intelligence and her father's stubbornness, a combination that Marcus joked would either make her a force to be reckoned with or drive them all to distraction. Thomas, at 6, was the most easygoing of their children, content to tag along with his siblings or play quietly on his own. In 1890, as the decade turned and California continued to grow and change around them, Marcus and Genevieve celebrated their 12th wedding anniversary. They left the children with Tom and his wife, who had married a few years earlier and lived in a house on the property, and rode up into the hills to a spot that had become special to them over the years. 12 years, Genevieve said, sitting beside her husband on the blanket he had spread on the grass, overlooking the ranch that stretched out below them. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I stepped off that stagecoach. Other times it feels like I have always been here. You have always been here, Marcus said, taking her hand. From the moment I first imagined having a partner to build this life with, it was you. I just did not know it yet. She leaned against him, comfortable in a way that came from years of intimacy and partnership. Do you remember what you said to me the day I arrived? That you wanted someone who chose this life deliberately. I remember. I chose it, she said softly. Not just that day, but every day since. I choose you, this life, our family, over and over again. He turned to face her, cupping her face in his hands the way he had on their wedding day. And I choose you. I saw the hope in your eyes all those years ago, and I have spent every day trying to be worthy of it, trying to give you everything you deserve. You gave me more than I ever dreamed of asking for, she whispered. You gave me your whole heart, and I have treasured it every single day. They made love there on the hillside, under the California sun, with the same passion that had marked their wedding night but deepened by years of love and understanding. Afterward, lying tangled together, Genevieve felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. The 1890s brought both challenges and triumphs. A drought in 1892 tested their resources and Marcus's management skills, but careful planning and the year-round creek on their property saw them through when other ranchers struggled. Joe, at 17, proved himself invaluable during the crisis, working alongside his father with a maturity that made Genevieve's heart swell with pride. Grace, at 15, had grown into a beautiful and intelligent young woman who had ideas about attending a women's college back east, much to Marcus's consternation. Genevieve supported their daughter's ambitions, remembering her own limited opportunities in Boston and wanting better for Grace. She should have choices, Genevieve argued one evening after Grace had gone to bed. The world is changing, Marcus. Women are getting educations, having careers. I do not want her to feel limited by being a rancher's daughter. I just worry about her being so far away, Marcus admitted. And I suppose I always imagined she would want to stay here, maybe marry a local boy and settle nearby. She might still do that, Genevieve said gently. But she should have the chance to see the world first, to know what else is out there. If she chooses to come back, it will be because she wants to, not because she had no other options. Marcus was quiet for a long time, then sighed. You are right, as usual. I will talk to her about schools, see what she is interested in. Grace did go east for college in 1895, to Wellesley College in Massachusetts, and the house felt empty without her vibrant presence. But her letters were full of excitement and learning, and when she came home for the summer, she was full of ideas and energy that she poured into helping improve the ranch's record-keeping systems and establishing a lending library in Jamestown. Joe, now 20, had grown into a man who looked remarkably like his father had at that age. He had started courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a sensible girl named Emma who fit into their family as though she had always been there. Genevieve watched her son fall in love with joy and a touch of bittersweetness, recognizing that her children were building lives of their own now. Thomas, at 15, was still finding his way, interested in everything from ranching to the new automobiles that were starting to appear in Sacramento. He had his mother's curiosity and his father's work ethic, and Genevieve suspected he would carve out his own unique path in life. On a warm evening in June 1896, the family gathered on the expanded porch for supper. Grace was home from college for the summer. Joe had brought Emma to join them, and Thomas was entertaining them with a story about a misadventure involving a particularly stubborn calf. Genevieve looked around at her family, at the ranch spreading out beyond them in the golden evening light, and felt a gratitude so intense it made her chest ache. Marcus caught her eye and smiled, that same smile that had caught her attention all those years ago, and she knew he felt it too. They had built this together, from nothing but hope and determination, and a willingness to take a chance on each other. Later, after the children had scattered to their various pursuits, and she and Marcus sat alone in the rocking chairs he had built years ago, she said, "Do you remember what you told me on our wedding day, that you hoped we could build something real between us?" "I remember," he said, reaching for her hand. "We did it," she said simply. "We built something more real and true than I ever imagined possible, a life, a family, a legacy." He pulled her from her chair into his lap, despite her laughing protest that they were too old for such things, and held her close. "We are not done yet," he said. "We have grandchildren to spoil, more years to enjoy together, and who knows what else life will bring. Whatever it brings, we will face it together," she said, kissing him. "Just like we always have." Joe and Emma married in the spring of 1897 in the same church where Marcus and Genevieve had spoken their vows 19 years earlier. The celebration afterward, held at the ranch, was attended by what seemed like half the county, a testament to the respect and affection the Campbell family had earned over the years. Genevieve watched her son dance with his new bride and remembered her own wedding day, the hope and fear and excitement all mixed together. "He will be happy," Marcus said, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses of punch. "They love each other, and they have a good foundation to build on." "I know," Genevieve said. "I just cannot quite believe our baby is married. When did he grow up?" "When we were not looking," Marcus said with a smile. "But we did well by him, Genevieve. He is a good man." Grace graduated from Wellesley in 1898 and surprised everyone by accepting a teaching position in San Francisco rather than returning home permanently. Genevieve understood her daughter's need for independence, even as she missed her terribly. Grace visited often, and her letters were full of her work and her life in the city. Thomas, having completed his schooling, announced that he wanted to try his hand at breeding horses exclusively, focusing on developing a line suited specifically to ranch work in California's varied terrain. Marcus gave him a portion of the property and the resources to start his venture, and Thomas threw himself into it with characteristic enthusiasm. In 1899, Genevieve became a grandmother when Emma gave birth to a daughter they named Lily. Holding her tiny granddaughter for the first time, Genevieve was transported back to the moment she had first held Joe, overwhelmed by the love and responsibility a new life brought. Marcus was equally besotted with his granddaughter, and Genevieve teased him about becoming soft in his old age. "Old age," he protested. "I am only 44, hardly ancient." "Old enough to be a grandfather," she retorted with a laugh. "Then what does that make you at 46? He asked, pulling her into his arms. "A very satisfied grandmother," she said, snuggling against him, "and a very lucky wife." As the new century dawned in 1900, the Campbell family gathered to celebrate both the new year and Marcus and Genevieve's 21st anniversary. Joe and Emma were there with baby Lily. Grace had come home from San Francisco, and Thomas brought the woman he had been courting, a horse trainer named Margaret who fit perfectly with their family's love of animals. Standing in the house that had grown and changed along with their family, surrounded by the people she loved most in the world, Genevieve reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 21 years ago, she had stepped off a stagecoach with nothing but hope and courage, trusting a stranger with her future. That stranger had become her partner, her lover, her best friend, and the father of her children. Together they had built an empire from nothing, raised a family, and created a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, coming to stand beside her. "About hope," she said, slipping her hand into his. "About how I arrived here with hope in my eyes, and you saw it and gave me everything. Your trust, your respect, your love, your whole life. You could have treated me as just a solution to a problem, but instead, you treated me as a partner worthy of everything you had to give." He raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "You gave me just as much. You took a chance on an unknown future. You worked beside me to build this ranch. You gave me children and a home worth fighting for. You brought joy and purpose to my life. I saw the hope in your eyes, yes, but you saw the loneliness in mine and chose to fill it with love." They stood together, watching their family laugh and talk around them, the house full of warmth and life. This was what they had built, Genevieve thought. Not just a successful ranch or a beautiful home, but a family rooted in love and respect, a legacy of hope and hard work. Joe approached with Lily in his arms, the baby reaching for her grandparents. Genevieve took her, marveling at how much she looked like Joe had at that age, and Marcus wrapped his arms around them both. This was their future now, grandchildren and watching their children build their own lives, and it was beautiful. Grace announced her engagement that evening to a professor she had met in San Francisco, a kind man who clearly adored her and supported her teaching career. The family welcomed him warmly, and Genevieve felt a deep satisfaction seeing all her children happy and settled. The years continued to pass, each bringing new milestones. More grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch with noise and laughter during holidays and summer visits. The automobile became common, though Marcus joked he would stick with horses. The ranch continued to prosper, with Thomas's horse breeding program becoming renowned throughout the state, and Joe managing the cattle operation with skill that matched his father's. In 1910, as Marcus and Genevieve celebrated their 32nd anniversary, they took another trip up to their special spot in the hills. The ride was harder than it used to be, their bodies showing the wear of years of hard work and life, but the view was just as beautiful. 32 years, Marcus said, his arm around Genevieve's shoulders. "More than half my life spent with you." "The better half," Genevieve said with a smile. She was 57 now, her blonde hair streaked with silver, her face lined with wrinkles earned from laughter and sun. But Marcus still looked at her the way he had on their wedding day, as though she was the most precious thing in his world. "Absolutely the better half," he agreed. "You know, I think about that day you arrived sometimes. How nervous I was, how afraid you would take one look at me and this rough life and run back to Boston. I think about it too, Genevieve said. How frightened I was, how uncertain. But then I saw you and something in me just knew. This was where I was meant to be, you were who I was meant to find. We were both taking such a risk, Marcus reflected, but it paid off better than I ever dreamed. They sat in comfortable silence, looking out over the ranch that had been the foundation of their life together. In the distance, they could see Joe working with a group of cattle, Thomas in the training corral with a young horse, and even from this distance, Genevieve could spot several grandchildren playing near the house. "We did well," she said softly. "We built something that will last beyond us." "We did," Marcus agreed. "But you know what I am most proud of?" "What?" "Not the ranch, though that is an accomplishment. Not even the children and grandchildren, though they are our greatest joy. What I am most proud of is that, after 32 years of marriage, I still wake up every morning grateful that you are beside me. I still look forward to our evenings together. I still love you more than I can put into words." Genevieve turned to face him fully, cupping his weathered face in her hands. "I feel the same way. You gave me everything, Marcus. When I arrived here, I had nothing but hope. You took that hope and built it into a life more wonderful than anything I had imagined. You loved me when I was a stranger, respected me when I had no claim to it, and partnered with me to create this beautiful life. I love you more now than I did on our wedding day, and I loved you then with my whole heart." He kissed her, a kiss that held 32 years of love and passion and partnership, and Genevieve felt the same flutter in her stomach that she had felt the first time he kissed her. Some things, she thought, never changed. The love between them had only grown deeper and richer with time. As they rode back to the ranch as the sun set, Genevieve reflected on the journey that had brought her from a frightened mail-order bride to a confident matriarch of a sprawling family. She had arrived with hope in her eyes, and Marcus had seen it and given her everything he had to give. In return, she had given him her whole heart, and together they had built something that would endure long after they were gone. The ranch house came into view, lights glowing in the windows and smoke rising from the chimney. Their family was there, waiting for them, the product of their love and their labor. This was home, this was family, this was love. And it had all started with a leap of faith, a mail-order bride and a rancher who had seen the hope in her eyes and chosen to nurture it into something beautiful. As they dismounted and walked hand in hand into the warm glow of their home, Genevieve sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for the courage that had brought her here, for the man who had given her everything, and for the life they had built together. It had been a wild, beautiful ride, and she would not have changed a single moment of it. Inside, their family gathered around them, 3 generations strong, and in the laughter and love that filled the room, Genevieve saw the future stretching out bright and full of promise, just like the hope that had brought her here all those years ago. She leaned into Marcus, feeling his steady strength beside her, and knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, just as they always had. Their love story, which had begun with such uncertainty, had become the foundation upon which an entire legacy was built, and it would continue to inspire and guide their family for generations to come.